Why smart people fall for stupid ideas. Nietzsche. Have you ever met someone who's brilliant, like genuinely intelligent, top of their class, always reading, always discussing ideas, and yet they fall for something that seems absurd? Maybe it's a conspiracy theory, maybe it's a cult-like ideology, maybe it's a belief system so riddled with contradictions that you wonder, how could someone so smart fall for something so dumb? That's what we're exploring today, and not just through psychology or sociology, but through the razor-sharp insight of Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who saw through the illusions of intelligence long before the modern world made them fashionable. Let's begin with a confession. Intelligence is not wisdom. We like to believe that the smarter someone is, the more immune they are to deception, foolishness, or manipulation. But is that actually true? Or are smart people just better at rationalizing their own delusions?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Nietzsche once said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." It's a statement that cuts deep into the heart of our discussion. What if intelligence is not the ability to access truth, but merely the capacity to construct convincing interpretations? Think about it. The smarter you are, the more tools you have at your disposal: language, logic, abstraction. But those tools don't come with a built-in compass. If your internal compass is broken, if your values, your instincts, your soul are off course, then your intelligence becomes a weapon against truth. You become a master of self-deception. Let me ask you a question and take a moment to really feel it. Have you ever used your intelligence to justify something you knew deep down was wrong? See, smart people are often praised for their ability to question things. But Nietzsche reminds us, questioning isn't always noble. Sometimes it's cowardice in disguise. We don't question because we're brave, we question because we're afraid. Afraid of meaning, afraid of commitment, afraid of truth that might demand something from us. So we doubt. And we keep doubting until we've doubted everything meaningful away. That's where nihilism begins. Nietzsche saw nihilism not as the absence of belief, but the collapse of value. When smart people fall into nihilism, they don't stop believing, they just believe in emptiness. They become cynics, ionists. They pride themselves on tearing things down, but they no longer know how to build. They mistake their skepticism for insight. But skepticism without direction is just erosion. It's corrosion of the soul. And here's the twist. The smarter you are, the better you are at corrosive thinking. You can deconstruct anything. You become a sniper of ideas. But what happens when you shoot down everything and there's nothing left standing? That's when stupid ideas start to look appealing. Because human beings need meaning. We crave it. And if our intelligence has destroyed all the traditional sources of meaning, faith, culture, morality, then we're left with a void. And guess what rushes into that void? Not reason, not truth, but ideology, conspiracy, cults, narratives that are compelling not because they're true, but because they feel like they give us purpose. And smart people, desperate to escape the abyss they've helped create, latch onto these narratives with even more fervor than the average person. Why? Because they need to believe that badly. Think about that. The most dangerous believers are not the ignorant masses, they're the intellectuals who've lost their foundation. Because once you've lost the capacity to believe in something real, you become vulnerable to anything that gives you the illusion of purpose. Nietzsche saw this in his own time. He saw the rise of ideologies that rejected truth in favor of force. He saw how smart people, philosophers, writers, revolutionaries, turned against reason and embraced movements that were emotionally satisfying but philosophically bankrupt. And he knew this wasn't an accident. It was a feature of intellect divorced from instinct. Let me ask you, is your intelligence serving your soul, or is it serving your ego? That's the great danger. Intelligence becomes a mask. We use it to appear wise, to appear virtuous, to appear strong. But what if behind the mask, we're hollow? What if we've built our minds like fortresses, but our hearts are starving? Nietzsche didn't believe in blind faith, but he did believe in instinct, in will, in the deep, primal forces that keep us connected to life. When we cut ourselves off from those forces, when we live entirely in the abstract, we become ripe for delusion. We fall for stupid ideas not because we're dumb, but because our intellect has no anchor. So here's a counterintuitive idea. Maybe the smarter you are, the more you need humility. Not the fake kind of humility that says, "Oh, I don't know anything," but the real kind that says, "I know a lot, but I'm still susceptible to error. I still need truth that comes from beyond reason. I still need to listen to the voice beneath the intellect." What is that voice for you? Is it intuition? Is it conscience? Is it love? Whatever it is, if you ignore it long enough, your intelligence will become a curse. It will lead you into ideologies that feel brilliant but are spiritually empty. You'll become the kind of person who can explain everything and understand nothing. And maybe that's the real tragedy, not that smart people fall for stupid ideas, but that they fall for them with such sophistication, such elegance, such self-congratulation, that they don't even realize they've fallen at all. The hidden arrogance of intelligence, how ego masquerades as wisdom. There's a subtle transformation that happens when intelligence detaches itself from humility. What begins as curiosity turns into certainty. What starts as a desire to understand the world becomes a desire to dominate it intellectually. And in that shift, ego slips in through the back door. Not the wild, boastful ego of obvious arrogance, but the quiet, refined ego that wears the mask of wisdom. This is the kind of ego that wears the mask of wisdom. Ego, the anti-mask ego, that wears the mask of wisdom. This is the kind of ego that Nietzsche warned us about. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It tells us that because we're smart, we're right. That because we can explain things, we understand them. That because we can criticize others, we are above them. And that illusion is far more dangerous than ignorance. Let's be honest. Knowledge is power, and power is seductive. When we learn something new, especially something complex, something that others don't know, it gives us a rush, a sense of superiority. It's intoxicating. And like any intoxication, it clouds our judgment. We start to believe that our intelligence grants us moral authority, that we are the enlightened ones, that those who disagree with us are not just incorrect, but inferior. And from there, it's a short step to condescension, to elitism, to the dangerous belief that we are immune to error because we are educated. But wisdom is not education. Wisdom is not knowing more facts. Wisdom is knowing the limits of what can be known. It's recognizing that truth is not always something we can grasp through logic alone. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He saw how the most dangerous lies are not the ones told by fools, but the ones told by intellectuals who mistake their cleverness for truth. Because cleverness can mimic wisdom. It can dress itself in philosophical language, in complex theories, in elegant arguments, but all the while it may be serving nothing but the thinker's own self-importance. Here's a question to sit with. When was the last time your intelligence led you to silence rather than speech? When was the last time it led you to awe, to mystery, to a place where you realized how little you truly control or comprehend? One of Nietzsche's core insights was that our need for intellectual control is often a mask for deeper fears. We fear chaos, we fear meaninglessness, we fear death, and so we build systems, scientific, philosophical, ideological, to protect ourselves. But the smarter we are, the more sophisticated those systems become, and the more likely we are to mistake them for reality itself. We don't just use ideas, we become possessed by them. We become defenders of abstractions, warriors for concepts, even when those concepts are disconnected from lived experience. The ego loves this. It thrives on abstraction because abstraction allows it to remain unchallenged. It never has to confront the messiness of life, the contradictions of being human. It can stay in the realm of theory, where it is always right, always superior, always in control. But life is not theory. Life is pain and love and uncertainty and beauty and failure. And if your intelligence cannot meet life on those terms, it will betray you when it matters most. Nietzsche's solution was not to abandon intellect, but to ground it, to reconnect it with what he called the will to power, not domination over others, but the inner drive to live boldly, authentically, creatively. That drive doesn't come from ego, it comes from a deep engagement with life, from saying yes to the world, not just analyzing it, from feeling the weight of existence and still choosing to affirm it. So ask yourself, is your intelligence a tool for life or a shield against it? Are you using your mind to serve your growth or to protect your pride? Because if it's the latter, then no matter how brilliant you are, you're still blind. You'll fall for ideas that flatter your ego, not challenge your soul. You'll follow ideologies that feel intellectual, but are really just emotional crutches dressed in logic. And worst of all, you'll think you're wise, when really you're just clever, and cleverness without wisdom is like a sword without a wielder. It cuts everything, including yourself. The seduction of certainty. Why false ideas feel safer than the truth. There is something profoundly terrifying about uncertainty. It gnaws at us in the quiet moments, in the pauses between ambition and action. We crave answers, we crave solid ground, and when the world offers none, we often reach for anything that feels like certainty. This is one of the deepest reasons why smart people, perhaps more than anyone else, fall for stupid ideas. Because intelligence, when untempered, does not teach us how to dwell in the unknown. It teaches us how to fill it, quickly, confidently, convincingly, even if the answers are wrong. Nietzsche warned us that the human mind is not naturally oriented toward truth. It is oriented toward survival, comfort, power, and sometimes the truth is too chaotic, too painful, too destabilizing to serve those ends. So we invent narratives. We construct worldviews. We tell ourselves stories not because they're true, but because they protect us. And the smarter we are, the better we are at constructing those stories. We don't believe less because we know more, we just believe differently. We hide our fear of uncertainty behind the mask of intellectualism. Instead of saying, "I don't know," we say, "Here's a theory." Instead of admitting vulnerability, we assert ideology, because ideology feels safe. It feels like control. But what happens when false certainty replaces open inquiry? What happens when we choose to believe something not because it's right, but because it's reassuring? We stop questioning, we stop listening, we become rigid. And rigidity is the enemy of truth, because truth is not a fixed point, it's a process, a dance, a living, evolving thing that requires humility, curiosity, and courage. But certainty kills that process. It freezes the dance. It locks us into positions we refuse to examine because to do so would mean facing the terrifying possibility that we've been wrong. Nietzsche called this the will to truth, but he knew that most people only pursue truth as long as it doesn't threaten them. The moment it does, they retreat, they double down, they cling to their beliefs, not because they're true, but because they're familiar. And familiarity feels like safety, it feels like home, even when it's a prison. Let me ask you something. What do you believe right now that you've never truly questioned, not just intellectually, but existentially? What idea, what identity, what assumption do you hold so tightly that losing it would feel like death? That's where your false certainties live, and that's where stupid ideas take root, not in the absence of thought, but in the refusal to think past your comfort zone. And again, the smarter you are, the harder this becomes, because you're better at building frameworks, better at defending them, better at constructing elegant rationalizations for why your beliefs are not only right but righteous. And that's when intelligence becomes a trap, a beautiful, seductive, airtight trap. Nietzsche believed that philosophy should be dangerous, that it should unsettle you, disturb you, shake you to your core. But most people use philosophy like a blanket, not a blade. They wrap themselves in ideas that soothe them. They quote thinkers not to challenge themselves, but to justify themselves. And in doing so, they miss the point entirely. Philosophy is not meant to protect you from the abyss. It's meant to lead you to it and dare you to look in, because when you finally face that abyss, when you confront the terrifying, liberating truth that life has no inherent meaning, that certainty is an illusion, that everything you know could be a lie, something miraculous can happen. You stop clinging, you stop pretending, you start living, not with the brittle arrogance of someone who has all the answers, but with the open-hearted courage of someone who's willing to ask better questions. And that's the antidote to false certainty, not more knowledge, but deeper humility, not louder opinions, but quieter awareness. You stop needing to be right, and you start needing to be real. You stop falling for stupid ideas, not because you've memorized better arguments, but because you've learned to love the truth more than your ego. So here's the real challenge. Can you let go of the need to be certain? Can you live in a state of not knowing, of perpetual becoming, of radical openness? Because if you can, then your intelligence is no longer a weapon. It's a lantern. It doesn't blind, it illuminates. And in that light, even the darkest ideas lose their power, escaping the lie, how to reconnect with truth without losing your mind. There comes a moment, if we're lucky, when the scaffolding of our false beliefs begins to collapse. Maybe it happens slowly through quiet disillusionment. Maybe it happens all at once like a philosophical earthquake. But when it comes, it feels like death. The death of certainty, the death of identity, the death of the comforting lies we've told ourselves for years. And in that moment we face a choice. Do we cling tighter to the ruins, or do we step into the unknown and begin again? Nietzsche would call this the moment of the great no, the rejection of everything false, safe, and inherited. But more importantly, he would urge us to follow it with the great yes, a radical affirmation of life, truth, and self-created meaning. Because escaping the lie isn't just about tearing things down. It's about rebuilding from something deeper than intellect, something more primal, more honest, more alive. So how do we do that? How do we reconnect with truth without losing our minds in the process? First, we must return to experience. Not abstract theories, not second-hand opinions, not ideologies wrapped in academic language, but direct, lived experience. What do you actually see, feel, know in your bones? What truths have you tasted in silence, in heartbreak, in beauty, in suffering? Those are the truths that survive collapse, the truths that can't be argued away. And they rarely come from books. They come from being awake to life. Too many smart people live in their heads, disconnected from their bodies, their emotions, their instincts. Nietzsche warned us that reason alone is a poor guide. He admired the instincts of animals more than the theories of most men, and maybe there's wisdom in that. If we want to escape the prison of clever but false ideas, we must reconnect with the instincts that keep us tethered to what is real. Hunger, love, fear, joy, these are not primitive distractions. They are the foundation of wisdom, the raw data of the soul. Second, we must cultivate honesty, ruthless, unflinching honesty, not just with others, but with ourselves. This is the hardest part, because it's one thing to admit you were wrong in public. It's another to admit in your own heart that your beliefs were built on fear, that your identity was a performance, that your intelligence was a mask. But until we face that inner dishonesty, we will keep falling for ideas that flatter our pride and numb our pain. That is what intelligence does. Let me ask you this. What lie are you still clinging to because the truth would hurt too much? That's the place to begin, not with more research or debate, but with a quiet reckoning, a shedding of layers, a return to what's real. Third, and perhaps most importantly, we must learn to create. Nietzsche believed that after God is dead, we must become creators of values. Not because everything is relative, but because meaning is not given, it's made. It's forged in fire. And that kind of creation requires courage. Not the shallow courage of bold opinions, but the deep courage to live deliberately. To take responsibility for your own meaning, to shape your life like a work of art. This is not easy, it's not comfortable, it doesn't come with applause, but it is the only way out of the trap. Because when you begin to live from truth, not someone else's truth, not society's truth, but your truth, you stop needing stupid ideas to make you feel safe. You stop outsourcing your soul to ideologies. You stop hiding behind intelligence. You become dangerous in the best way possible. A person who thinks clearly, feels deeply, and refuses to lie to themselves or to the world. And maybe that's the final insight Nietzsche offers us, that truth is not a destination, but a way of being, a posture, a path. It's not about having the right answers, it's about asking the right questions and having the courage to live inside them. So ask yourself one last time, what would your life look like if it were truly your own? Because in the end, the greatest tragedy is not that smart people fall for stupid ideas. It's that they never realize they could have written a better story. One grounded, not in certainty, not in pride, but in truth. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most revolutionary thing a smart person can do.